Hey guys, this is Courtney from Willows Bloom. Today we are going to be doing a synastry reading with the artists Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera. And I will preface this without saying I don't know a lot about Diego. I did look up some stuff online and got a little bit of information about him, but it mostly seemed to center around his artistic career rather than his personality or childhood events. So I'm going to kind of break down each chart momentarily, individually, and when I say momentarily, I mean briefly. And then I'm going to look at their synastry and see what was activating between them because they have a pretty big age gap. He was born in 1886 and she was born in 1907. So you can do the math on that because I'm not good at math. But yeah, they have a big age gap, but they have very similar ways of being in their chart, and then also some challenges as well. So they had a very passionate and tumultuous relationship that is really well known. So I think we'll really get to see that play out here. So let's go ahead and start off with Frida. So we can see that Frida Kahlo is a Leo rising. She has a Cancer sun and she has a Taurus moon. So those are her big three, but when we look for her and her career, we can see that she has a lot going on. Because when I look at somebody's career life, I mainly look at their sun, any planets next to the sun, where the sun is at, the midheaven, and any planets that rule the midheaven, which would be Venus, because she's a Taurus midheaven. And Venus is the planet that rules over Taurus. And then I also look at the ascendant as well. So all of these planets are going to show a lot about how she's going to be known in the world and what work she's going to be doing. So we can see from the beginning that it's very likely that she is going to be something artistic. And I say this because Neptune on the sun is very classic for artists, musicians, things of that nature. And then Venus is also the second planet of art, which is the ruler of her midheaven. So we can see two instances here of artistry. So we can see that she basically has a knack for this from day one. And I think part of the reason why she's able to unlock so many gifts of artistry is because of her divine connection. And that's essentially what Neptune does with the sun, is it gives you a divine connection. And later on, we're going to be looking at the chart of Tyler Henry. And that actually might come out before this. And if that does, Tyler Henry is a medium. And he has Neptune on the sun as well. So he has a divine connection where he can access spirits from the other side. So Frida can access essentially images and information from the other side that she then transmits into her work. However, when this happens, when we become essentially mediums in some way for energy or for spirit, whether that's through art or whether that's through actually speaking to past loved ones or through healing, whatever that is through, we become quite porous because we are almost like an empty jug that is filled up with energy from spirit. And what that does is it weakens the immune system. It weakens the physical body. It makes us a lot more prone to infections. Neptune especially makes us really prone to getting colds and like respiratory affections. So we can see here that there is a tendency for a weakened immune system. And we know that during childhood, she was very ill. And on top of that, she also has another placement in her chart representative of accidents. So we can see here with Mars, which is a planet of actually accidents, of cutting, of surgery, of war. Mars in her chart is directly opposite her sun. And the sun is not only has to do with the physical body and our vitality, but for her, it's especially the case that it has to do with her body because it's the planet that rules over her first house of our physical body. So when we're looking at some physical ailments in somebody's chart, we would see very clearly she has multiple indicators here of having a low immune system and accident prone. On top of that, her Mars is also next to Uranus, which is a planet of unexpected occurrences or suddenness. And so she may suddenly get into an unexpected accident, which could affect her health because of this opposition with the sun. The sun is also representative, though, of somebody's life direction, of somebody's purpose, and somebody's sense of ambition. And so the fact that this accident-prone energy is opposite her sun is indicative that this will then, whatever happens here, will then influence her career. So having Mars and Uranus, this was very easily represented as her getting into a bus accident in her adulthood. So she was sick as a child, and then she became very unwell after she was hit by a bus. So we can see for so many reasons why her health was really, really poor in this lifetime. However, it was also those health conditions that gave her this ability to see these images. So those, essentially that same part of her chart gave her both of these things. And so it was a gift for her, although it was involved in a lot of suffering as well. She's also lucky as well because she has Jupiter next to her sun. And Jupiter next to the sun is allowing the sun to shine brighter. So she has a great potential to make a big impact through her career and be seen in a big way, especially because this is in the 11th house. So the 9th, 10th, 11th house, these are quite visible in the chart. This is where the sun is at its peak up here in the 10th house. So we can see she's just more likely to be visible because of this planet here. She's more likely to be lucky. And we're going to see how this is activated in her chart with Diego. And especially because it's on the North Node, which is an enhancer already. So Jupiter enhances, the North Node enhances, and these are all combined. The interesting thing is that it's in her 8th house of friendships, community, connections, and benefactors. And that's when we'll talk about how Diego fits into that. She also has her moon at a critical degree, the 29th degree of Taurus. So quite a stubborn nature here. She is definitely here to learn a lesson in this lifetime. Whenever we see the moon at 0 or any planet at 0 or 29 degrees, critical degrees, we know they are here to learn something. We're all here to learn something, but when a planet is at the 29th degree, it is like the moment where you procrastinated so much and you have to write a book report and there is no more time to waste. You are really down to the line here. And that's a sense of urgency that we get with a moon here at 29 degrees, that there is a lesson to learn that has to be learned right now in this lifetime. No more delays. If it were at 0 degrees, it's just the beginning of this journey, and there can be a lot of mistakes made because of the uncertainty of this new energy. So we can see she is trying to grow in her sense of stability within her career because this is a moon in Taurus in the 10th house. And she may have some rigidity here as well, but I think this stubbornness is going to really benefit her. It's going to help her not give up on her dreams and see basically nothing else as an option for her to pursue besides what she wants to do. Lucky for her, the moon is also a planet representing the public. So being in her 10th house, she is getting more public recognition through her work. And I also wanted to mention the fact that she has her Venus and Pluto right next to each other in Gemini in the 10th house. So we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we get to Diego, but this is very classic for being a little bit more jealous in relationships, attracting a partner with unequal power dynamics, or sometimes even abuse, but it would really depend on the rest of the chart. And we can, again, come back to this when we get to Diego, but we can see here she feels very, very intensely. And on top of that, Venus is her career planet. It's the ruler of her midheaven of Taurus here. So her career planet being next to Pluto is indicative of obsession also with her art. And then lastly, some darkness with her art. Pluto is the god of the underworld. And we can see from her art that she really displayed a lot of emotional suffering and pain, physical pain, a lot of kind of dark imagery, but also very beautiful at the same time, which is Venus and Pluto together. She also has this making a square to Saturn in the 8th house. So I think that this can kind of start to peer into Frida's childhood, where her mother became, I believe, depressed after giving birth to her. And I think it can indicate a general feeling of Venus square Saturn, that relationships are hard, or that there's a lot of fear in relationships. Because Pluto is a planet of fear, and Saturn in the 8th house can instill a lot of fear and insecurity and a feeling of lack. And so there is some really deep, intense wounding here around love and affection and being desired and womanhood, all Venus topics. And we know that she was not able to be physically intimate with her partner because of these accidents that she went through. And so we can really see these themes already embedded in her chart. And then when we look at Diego together with it, we see how they are activated in this partnership. So before we jump into them together, let's look at Diego alone. And again, briefly, because I don't know his chart very well, or his early life, I meant to say. So Diego is a Cancer rising, Sagittarius sun, also a Taurus moon. So we can already start to see a connection here. We can see that Frida has her sun in Cancer and Diego has his rising sign in Cancer, and they both have Taurus moons. So they have two big overlapping of the three that we look at initially in people's charts. And this is going to indicate soul familiarity. When you meet somebody who has sun on your moon, Venus on your ascendant on your sun, this is going to give that feeling of, I've known you in a past life. There's something about you that gets me. And it creates kind of like this clicking, like a puzzle piece. So we can see here that his sun has Venus next to it. So this is very classic for people who are artistic in nature and very much relationship oriented as well. Oftentimes they can be blinded in love, blinded in relationships. They can maybe also have things related to the house that it entails that they are blinded by. So whatever house that Venus is in charge of, which would be the house of Taurus and Libra, so 4th and 11th houses, so friends and family, are areas in his life where he's likely to have some blind spots, some things that take him by surprise, some things that happen that he didn't expect that may be possibly negative, or just, things that he didn't know about. I'm going to say that it's likely to be challenging because he also has Pluto in the 11th house. So we can see here that he may attract very powerful friends. He may have strong influence on his friends. He may embody that Pluto energy and be highly influential, as well as attract other highly influential people. And because Neptune is here as well, he's attracting an artistic community. And with his moon here, it's also giving him a little bit of favor. So people are going to be more drawn to him as well. And it's also, his sense of community would be very important for his emotional well-being. Having this feeling of belonging is going to be important for him, especially with Venus on the sun. But sometimes it makes belonging actually more difficult with Venus on the sun. So it becomes important and difficult. And that's often what we'll see in people's charts, is that sometimes the most important things to us are the things that are not as easily satisfied within our lives and within our charts. And we can see this theme play out again because his relationship ruler, so the ruler of his 7th house, which has Capricorn on the cusp, is Saturn. So Saturn's the ruler of his relationships, and it's right on his ascendant. So relationships become a primary aspect of his life. So this is, again, a repeating theme. And whenever I see themes repeat in a chart, I can see this is very, very important. So this is a very relationship-oriented person. But again, another theme of it being challenging. And the reason I say that is because first of all, having Saturn as your relationship planet can already be a bit challenging. And then on top of that, it's opposite Mars, which is a planet of division, a planet of breaking up, of fighting. And so we can see this contentiousness of relationships are important. They define my identity. They make a huge impact on me, and I am hugely impacting on them. They are core to my life. They are one of the central themes of my life. And they're also a source of pain. They're also a source of conflict. And this is something that Diego kind of inherently has within him. And we can see this not so much with Frida, but we can see that she does have pain mostly around fear and lack of trust in her relationships. And Diego has he has a little bit of that, but he has quite a bit of just conflict in general. And one of the things that we see here is a connection between relationships and his career, because the ascendant has a lot to do with our career. It's how we move forward in the world. So we have his relationship planet on his ascendant, so it's driving his ship, telling him how to navigate, where to go, which is largely kind of how we operate through our career. We have, how we're making decisions will affect our career direction. On top of this, we see that Mars, which is the ruler of his 10th house of career, is on his relationship line, his 7th house cusp. So again, we're seeing the interweaving of these two areas of his life. So we can see here that working and partnerships become very much intermingled and important, but also a source of pain, but also a source of passion. So a lot of energy going on here. He also has a mutable grand cross. So he has Pluto squaring the north node. Okay, sorry, the cat interrupted me. But yes, he has a grand cross, a mutable grand cross, with Pluto in the sign of Gemini squaring the north node in Virgo, which squares Mercury in Sagittarius, which squares the south node of Pisces. So all mutable signs, all in a square. So what does a square or a grand cross create? It creates conflict. It creates tension. And so we can see this as a theme in his life. And whenever somebody has this, it's almost like they are seeking out or accepting or owning or unafraid of conflict as a way to create something, as a way to grow as a person. So it's not like I'm saying they're trying to fight with everyone. What I'm trying to say is they are not running away from tenseness. They are willing to head towards problem solving. So that's what is essentially presented in their chart, is giving them the ability to look at conflict and issues in their life as a way of growth and as a way of creating something magical out of it. It will depend on the consciousness of the person to what degree they enact that, of course. And with Saturn on the ascendant, he's kind of hard-headed in a way. Like there's something quite stubborn about Saturn on the ascendant, in a good way, where you are disciplined and not willing to give up. And he also has his moon in Taurus. So there is this solidness to him, this energy that's not willing to be broken. And so he can harness this chart without it overwhelming him. Now let's look at their relationship. So his Saturn that we were just pointing out and his ascendant. Okay, sorry, the cat is just going hard. So his Saturn ascendant is in Cancer. On her Jupiter, on her Sun, Neptune, North Node, all in Cancer. So this indicates a few things. First of all, it's indicating that familiarity that I mentioned, that they have the Sun and the Ascendant in the same sign and conjunct, so within a 5-degree orb. On top of this, we can see that he is activating her Jupiter and North Node. So he is the benefactor. You know how I mentioned she has a potential to grow largely because of benefactors with Jupiter in the 11th? He is that person for her. And we can see in particular that he comes in as like an older, wiser, sage type of individual, because he is the one bringing the Saturn energy, which has to do with maturity and being older, essentially. So he's coming in here as her wise teacher, and she's also helping him to grow in many ways. There are ways in which he has a sense of discipline with Saturn, a sense of structure and established authority and tradition backing him as a man in that time. And she comes in with a sense of belief and wonder about the world and so much potential for growth and spiritual impact. And they combine together to make her career blow up to what it was. So we can see just so much growth there. And we can also see with Neptune, with his Neptune on her midheaven and her moon. So I saw this in actually many charts where the person with the Neptune is both giving and receiving more fame. So both Frida and Diego will benefit from more fame as a result of this relationship, because it's impacting her midheaven, her visibility, her career, but it's also going to impact him as well. And being on her moon, Neptune on her moon, there may be many ways in which their relationship was like hopeless romantic, idealizations of the partner, extremely artistic and feeling at home in the artistry of the other person. So the moon is how we get our needs met, and they both have their moon in Taurus. So their needs have very similar, if not same, undertones to them. So they have this likeness that's already here. And then on top of that, with Neptune on her moon, there is a sprinkle of fairy dust on their relationship. So you would think that their relationship is idyllic, right? Because we have the fairy dust that's sprinkled on here. We have this familiarity between their ascendants and their moons. And you would just think that everything would be perfect. But every chart is going to have challenging aspects to it, as well as every combined synastry chart of the two people. And so one of the things that we see initially is this aspect where Frida has her Venus and Pluto together, making a square to Saturn, where her insecurities and her jealousies and her feeling of not being enough can come out within her. That's already innate within her. We can see this triggered by Diego's Chiron. Chiron is a planet of wounding. And so his kind of representation of himself in this dynamic is going to ultimately trigger her insecurities in this dynamic. And I also think that her artistic expression, her passion, her fervor, and her power within her art could also trigger the insecurities that Diego has as well. And so we can see that while they have so much familiarity, soul connections, love, we can see that they also have this area of triggering one another. And so this could be a relationship that presents certain challenges because of that. We also see that they have the same Mars sign. So they're both very driven. And Mars in Capricorn is a strong energy that allows you to be driven, usually in a more structured way. So you typically excel when you have a goal or plan that you are going for. So you can see that they both have this underlying desire to have some kind of plan for what they want to achieve. However, Frida is going to be a lot more erratic in her representation of this. Her Mars is retrograde, her Mars is with Uranus. So her health conditions, her vitality is going to definitely affect her level of energy. It's going to affect her ability to plan these unexpected things that happen to her. And she also might just be somewhat, erratic in what she wants. Like maybe she would change kind of certain aspects of what she wants or how she wants to do something as time goes on. Very much driven by passion. So I could see passion and a plan combined with her. So they have overlap, but I think he's the more structured one in the dynamic for sure. Something else that we can see with her Mars-Uranus conjunction is her feistiness and alternative way of viewing things. In particular, since it's opposite the sun, we can see it really affects her life and her career direction and the way that people perceive her. And we know that she was definitely a feminist, and the things that she represented in her art and the things that she represented as a person were very much against what was going on at the time. And so we can see that powerful impact with Pluto being on her Venus. She can make this impact through her work, but we can also see it's inherently this kind of rebellious nature with Mars and Uranus together in the 5th house of creativity, that she's best able to express this kind of alternative way of viewing things. On top of this, her Mars-Uranus, or mostly her Mars, is on his relationship line. So their Mars are conjunct. So this is very passionate, very fiery, but sometimes what happens with fire, it burns us. So there can be so much passion, so much fire that it can feel tumultuous, ups and downs, and argumentative, jealous with these Plutos, but also somewhat stable and grounded in their careers and in their interests and in their personality types. So very much an interesting kind of relationship that they share here. And because his Mars is conjunct hers, that means that his Mars is also opposite her sun. So when we see a pattern that plays out in our chart that is also playing out in the relationship, her Mars opposite sun is being played out with his Mars opposite her sun, it's going to emphasize this within our relationship, but also within our own lives. So Mars opposite the sun can indicate a pulling between two wills. I almost imagine like Siamese twins that are born that are connected, but they seem like they want to pull apart. It's like two different people, two different identities, two different directions, because these are both the masculine energies in our chart. So when I see an individual with this, there can be a conflict of wills. So maybe there are times when her life direction versus what she wants head in totally different ways and really pull her apart. So maybe times when she's wanted to do art or pursue a certain path and she gets into an accident, or she wants to, sleep with Diego, but she physically can't. It's just like the reality of the situation versus what she wants may differ many times in her life. And it can be quite challenging because of these outer planets involved as well. So we can see this is being really triggered within the relationship. So his Mars opposite her sun is going to indicate that her inability or her kind of having to make peace with these things being at odds within her is going to be triggered or come up even more in this certain dynamic. So she will notice even more that she can't go to that trip with him that he's going on, or that she can't sleep with him like I mentioned, or that, she can't perform in the same way that he does as consistently because she's unwell. And we can also see that his Uranus makes a square to his Mars, loosely. And because her Mars is closer, it makes an even tighter square to his Uranus. So the same pattern is repeating here for him. So for him, there may be a little bit of this also kind of rebellious nature whenever I see Uranus squaring Mars. Whenever there's a square, there can be a rebelliousness that is not fully integrated within us. So our desire for freedom and individuality versus our desire to have a plan and create something substantial for ourselves are somehow not working together fully in our lives, and they need creative ways to become intertwined. So that was part of Diego's life. So there are ways in which maybe he had tumultuousness in a relationship that was sometimes conflicting with his plans, or this could appear in a lot of different ways. So we can see this inherent within him, and then again being brought up even more in their dynamic because Frida's Mars is conjunct his, and is also squaring his Uranus. So we can see here that there's a lot of battle of the wills because Uranus, the sun, these squares, oppositions, all of this is really indicating that there are two really strong-willed people who will not always see eye to eye, who may feel like one person is taking charge in a moment and they're going to rear their ugly head. And so this is again where some of that passion can stir up and cause a sense of conflict and also a lot of energy. And like you never kind of know what you're going to get, which in this relationship may have felt good and bad at the same time. On top of this, Mars is our, as I mentioned, masculine. So part of what it's trying to do is kind of control things a little bit and take dominance, or, you know, take the lead. And so one of the things that happened in their relationship was the fact that Frida was unwell and could not be intimate with Diego. And so Diego went and just had other partners. And so we can see how that could come up in their relationship. And this Mars square Uranus energy that he holds, like being sexually rebellious, sexually liberated in his relationship, was a little bit of would cause conflict here. And on top of this, we can see with this jealous and insecure energy with Chiron, it's really bringing about that sense of pain as well within the dynamic. However, because Venus is not only a relationship planet, but also for her in particular, a career planet, it was this pain, this struggle that actually led to some of her greatest work. And so it really kind of informs each other, all these different elements of her life, essentially. So there's a lot more that I could say. I mean, these charts have never-ending amounts to explore, but I'm just going to leave it at that for now. If you guys are interested in learning astrology, definitely check me out at willisboom.com. I have a course on there, and I will be running workshops in the future. I also have a fun free quiz for you guys to try where you can discover what planet best represents you in astrology. So if you're interested in checking that out, I'll have that all linked down in the description box down below, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.